Okay, we are pleased to have here today Ramon Barua, the CEO of Aclara Resources. Aclara is a Toronto-based heavy rare earths developer. There are 17 rare earth elements. Dysprosium and terbium are the two that Aclara is focused on. The U.S. Department of Energy has identified dysprosium as the single most critical of all rare earths. These rare earths are critical to a variety of end markets, including EVs, wind energy, and defense. Ramon will walk us through the Aclara story and their go-to-market strategy. And now we'll turn it over to Ramon.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's a pleasure being with you and of course the rest of the guests. Thank you very much for inviting me. Okay, you're right on spot with this topic. You know, is very hot these days as part of the tariff war that started between the U.S. and different countries, especially with China. You know, rare earths have been already actively used by the Chinese government as a significant card in this trade war. No, they have restricted the access to top seven heavy rare earth elements. No, that has caused a lot of chaos. You know, in many users of permanent magnets, including electric vehicle manufacturers. No, so I believe that this is a very relevant topic these days, and I hope the presentation will be of interest to you and our guests. The first slide, this is the cover of our corporate presentation. I'm going to be talking between 15 and 20 minutes. I'll go very quickly through the slides. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions. If you're interested in Aclara, you can see there at the bottom right of the slide, we have a LinkedIn page where we always publish news. We're very active in communicating with our shareholders and stakeholders in general. The second one is our X account. We also publish regularly on the sector and on Aclara. And the two others, the Aclara Chile one is in Spanish and the Aclara Brazil is in Portuguese. But if you're interested on how we interact, you know, with our local communities, you can see the information firsthand from our Instagram accounts. This picture is of our pilot plant. This pilot plant was deployed in Chile last year. And is now in operation in Brazil. So after meeting our objectives in Chile, we have completely rebuilt it, and it is in operation in Brazil. Of course, if you're interested to come and visit, you're more than welcome. We are receiving right now a lot of people there. No? And the objective of this plant is not only to optimize the process to produce commercial samples, to demonstrate to the community the environmental qualities, you know, of our process. As you can see, it doesn't generate any fumes. There are no smells. There are no noises. It's a very benign process, and we'll talk more about it during the slides. So great. I was mentioning to Peter before we started the presentation. I like to start with this because many rare earth projects you'll see in the first page of their slides, you know, a picture of a mountain in the middle of the desert saying, you know, someday we'll develop something here. At Aclara, we're very proud to have a quite substantially developed a project already. Steven, if you can please help me with the slides. Let's go to the next one. Thank you. That's a disclaimer for forward-looking statements. The next one, please. Thank you. So talking about Aclara, Aclara is a company listed in the Toronto Stock Exchange. You see there our ticker is ARA. And I would like, you know, to mention that we are, I mean, our competitive advantage, our business case is supported on three very distinctive pillars. No? The first one is that we have a type of deposit that is called ionic clays. When we think about China, you know, and their competitive advantage, we know that it's in the form of the heavy rare earths, no? And they are extracting the heavy rare earths precisely from these type of deposits in their southern provinces. So geologically, we have two deposits, one in Brazil and one in Chile, that are, I would say, copy-paste geologically what the Chinese have. And that is an enormous advantage, no? And I will distinguish three special characteristics. The first one is that Here, the metallurgy is extremely simple. Rare earths, most of the deposits of rare earths, I would say 99% in terms of number of deposits, rare earths come in the form of a hard rock. And the metallurgy requires, a very large capex projects, a lot of use of energy, of water, of acid, and you're going to be generating a radioactive waste, no? So not very friendly. However, ionic clays, again, have these three distinctive characteristics. The first one, the metallurgy, again, is very benign. We'll talk about that. The second is the high contents of heavy rare earths. And the third benefit is that essentially you do not have to deal with radioactivity. So environmentally, this type of deposits tend to be very friendly if you have a technology similar to that of Aclara. In China, of course, they do in situ leaching. So the environmental reputation and performance is not great, but what we're doing is completely different. I'll show you a detail of the process. It's a patented process that we have named the circular mineral harvesting process. So again, that's the first pillar of our advantage, the quality of our resources and our process to extract them. The second advantage is something we realized early last year in early 2024. We come from a mining background, no, and we have come from the Hochschild Group, the CAP group in Chile, where we have more than 100 years, 110 years actually of mining experience, and we were focusing, on the mining part and then concentrating the clays into a concentrate in a plant similar to the one I showed you at the beginning. However, we have noticed that that is not enough. No, in order to be a successful rare earth company, we definitely need to integrate further. And in 2024, we launched our intention to do separation of rare earths. Essentially, that means taking the concentrate and separating the individual rare earth elements into their individual oxides, no? And then we went even a step further, which is to use those oxides and convert them into the metal alloys that are used to fabricate the permanent magnets. So Aclara's narrative, Aclara's strategy, Aclara's story is one that encompasses, doing the mining, the concentration, the separation, and then the alloy making, which are again the raw materials that a magnet maker will take in order to supply the automakers, the wind turbines, and the emerging robotics industry. Both industrial and humanoid robots that are probably going to dominate, our industrial growth objectives in the West in the coming years. We have decided to as our plan A, to develop those integrated facilities. Think of them as industrial chemical plants in the United States. The reason for that is because we think that the US is the country that is taking more concrete action, towards establishing an alternative supply chain to China. And we believe that through their policies, we're going to be able to access, great offtake contracts and low-cost financing. And the last pillar, that is also very distinctive of Aclara is its ownership. No, you'll see probably many rare earth projects that have been discovered or that are being promoted by I would like to call them early stage teams. In the case of Aclara, 57% of the company is already owned by the Hochschild Group. The Hochschild Group has Hochschild Mining, a company listed in the London Stock Exchange, Cementos Pacasmayo, Peru's second largest cement company, listed in the New York Stock Exchange, and an international university called UTEC. No? And CAP owns 10% of Aclara, and it's a very large Chilean industrial group, also with more than 70 years of experience doing mining, especially of iron ore, and again, several industrial initiatives as well. No, and I think these three distinctive elements make us a quite unique company. Let's go into the detail of some of these points. No, so Stephen, if you can help me with the next slide, please. So talking about rare earths, there's always this paradox. No, people probably the first question they ask is, people say, we know that rare earths are not rare. and they are correct. No, Peter was saying these are 17 different elements, and the key is to understand the supply demand dynamics of each of these elements. No, so we need to talk about neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, terbium, etc., in order to go to really to the meander, the core of this problem. And summarizing this, the biggest problem is with dysprosium and terbium. No, these two elements are required to be included in the permanent magnets that will go into the high performance motors in those where the operating temperatures are significantly higher than room temperature, no? Namely electric vehicles, wind turbines, and some of the applications of robotics. So if we do a deep dive, in the DY and TB are a little, let's think of them as a little bit interchangeable. Terbium is more scarce, more difficult to find. So most of the focus of our communications is focused on dysprosium. And if we look at how the market is today, we see that China essentially dominates the market. Although there's a little bit of production coming from MP Materials and Lynas, that production is currently going to China. Lynas just announced that they're going to try to process that in Malaysia. But again, it's a drop in the ocean, no? And when we look at estimated demand, the green bar there, this is an independent number provided by Argus Media, by 2030. And this is only due to the growth of electric vehicles. We're looking at doubling the demand. If we were to add robotics demand, this could really blow off the chart. So we need to double the supply. And as you can see, Aclara being the largest and most significant project outside of China, we're only going to be producing 241 tons of dysprosium. No? You see there also in the middle of the chart Serra Verde, which is another ionic clay deposit in Brazil, currently selling all of their production into China with a goal of producing 185 tons. No? So again, our expectation is that this market is going to be substantially undersupplied going forward. Next slide, please. And based on that expectation, the U.S. government is seeing exactly the same thing. No, this is on the left. You can see a document published by the Department of Energy in May of last year, where it shows that dysprosium, is on the top right corner, as Peter mentioned, the single most critical of all critical elements. And China is doing the same. No, they fully understand this. And as you can see on the chart on the right, they are already either buying or contributing significant capital in order to capture the offtake of the most important, rare earth projects outside of China. No? So think of this, we're in a race. I would say China is significantly ahead. We're starting to move forward, but ensuring that we have very critical elements like dysprosium available for Western supply chains is going to be absolutely critical, and that is at the core, of the Aclara Resources strategy. Next slide, please. So moving into our deposits, I think we can talk a lot about geology. What I can tell you again, as a quick summary, is that we have copy-paste what the Chinese have, but we're taking a completely different approach. No, although in China and Myanmar, and you can find this easily on the internet, they are extracting the minerals using in situ leaching methods, essentially throwing the chemicals in the environment and recovering the rare earths at the bottom of these hills. Our process, in essence, is trying to make these chemical reactions happen in a constrained environment. No, you can see there on the flow chart on the bottom right. These deposits are very superficial. There's basically no stripping ratio, no. Or the stripping ratio is very low. There's no overburden virtually. In the case of Chile, we bought the land from the forestry industry. So right now we have artificially grown pine and eucalyptus owned by a Chilean company called ARA.TO. And we're able to extract these clays. They are very friable. So you do not need explosives. Just with a front loader, you're able to extract them. There is no crushing and no milling, which is very important because these two stages in traditional mining, they're the ones that consume most of the energy and hence generate most of the CO2 footprint. No, so this makes this project very clean. And then at the plant, we have essentially three stages. No, a first tank where we put the clays in contact with water and ammonium sulfate, which is a very common fertilizer used in agriculture every day. And we already started extracting the rare earths. Then this solution moves into a second tank where we adjust the pH and decant impurities. Impurities here are calcium, magnesium, aluminum, very standard elements. And then in a third tank, we adjust the pH for a third time, and we precipitate a rare earth carbonate, which is our final product. Another innovation is that we fully circulate the water that we use with a 95% efficiency. And we also fully recirculate the ammonium sulfate with 99% efficiency, which is this is not only great environmentally, but also from a cost standpoint, we're able to recycle our main reagent. And that allows us, to wash the clays before returning them to site. And we have made a commitment, to redeposit those clays on site, but this time grow a native forest on top of it, a forest that we will donate to the community, for future generations. You see there in the top right, the United Nations already has given us an award on our water management system. And we've been able to demonstrate that this process works in our pilot plant in Chile, and it's now in operation in Brazil. Again, you're all invited to come and visit firsthand. Next slide, please. Here is a quick summary of the projects in terms of the relative size. The Carina module in Brazil is much larger. The resource there is probably around 10 times larger than the resource in Chile. That doesn't mean that Chile cannot grow. We have found more ionic clays in Chile. We're waiting, to obtain our permits there in order to then consider, developing other sites in country. In Brazil, we also continue to do exploration, trying, of course, to enlarge the Carina resource, but also find other locations with a lot of prospectivity for heavy rare earths. Our objective in both cases is to be in production by 2028. We have preliminary economic studies already published on these two. And at the beginning of next year, first quarter, hopefully, we intend to have feasibility studies completed. In Chile, important to mention, we sold a 20% of the Penco module to CAP. Again, this is a multi-billion-dollar company with a distinguished experience in mining and industrial processing. So they're very proud partners of Aclara. And in Brazil, it's 100% owned deposit. And we have signed, and you can see there as with the governor of the state of Goiás, Ronaldo Callado, with whom we have signed an MOU, to fast track the project. So we're quite excited about the speed at which the Brazilian asset is developing. Next slide, please. But as I mentioned in the first slide, we were not happy only be doing the mining and the concentration. In this slide, you can see there behind the light blue bar that Aclara is participating in all the different stages, of the supply chain. We're doing mining in Brazil, in Chile. We're doing separation through a 100% owned subsidiary that we have created in the US called Aclara Technologies. And then we have created a company. It's a 50-50 joint venture between Aclara and CAP, our Chilean partners, to do metals under the specifications, of the magnet manufacturers. In our case, we have decided to sign an MOU. It's a strategic partnership with a company called Vacuum Schmelze. It's a German company. We believe is the top company doing magnets outside of Asia. And they are important because they are already building a magnet facility in South Carolina in the US. with $100 million received by the Department of Defense and a contract to supply General Motors. No, this is great news because for the OEMs that you see on the right, no, looking to have an alternative to China, you can see there in the red bar. Of course, China can do all of this. They will need to talk to different parties. No, here with the solution that we are providing, not only do we have the top ionic clay deposits in the world outside of China, but also we have a complete solution, that allows them to have a cost-effective and logistics and there are lots of synergies of having all of this in-house. Under the current situation, we have been increasingly significant, increasingly um, uh, doing more conversations with OEMs as they look, of course, to find alternative sources for their magnets and magnets to be produced, with non-Chinese supplies. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide in our presentation. Again, the objective was to emphasize again our strong shareholders. Financially, we're a very robust company. We have invested more than $200 million already of money, to develop the assets, to move the resources from discovery all the way to measured and indicated category, to build the pilot plants, to build a technology that is allowing us, to offer this strategic supply to different superpowers. We have right now more than $40 million in cash. We have zero debt, and again, a great partnerships. No, I apologize because you see there's a bullet point that has not been updated. This is market cap of December 24, $60 million. But we have included the chart on the right, of our share price that shows that the market is already reacting, to the strategic value of Aclara. No? So great opportunity to invest early in a company that we believe is going to be very strategic, of minerals that are significantly undersupplied, with the right partners and with the right integration strategy. Thank you very much for your attention. No, happy to take any questions that you have.
If you have a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A tab on the dashboard. Ramon, could you maybe just talk about the end markets, especially on the robotics side? How much do you need to make a humanoid or robotic type of machine?
Absolutely. Excellent question, and I had it myself. So I've been talking to a lot of engineers. We have a great relationship with MIT. And a few weeks back, I was speaking with the engineer that developed the MIT Cheetah. No, it's one of their high-performing robots. And his estimation was that every humanoid robot is going to need between 2 and 3 kilograms of magnets. No, now not necessarily all of them are going to require heavy rare earths. No, those performing simple tasks, probably just neodymium and praseodymium will do. But those doing more repetitive tasks and higher performance tasks, no, are going to generate more temperature in that activity, and they're going to be requiring also heavy rare earths. No, and then you have all the front of the industrial robots. No, of course, humanoids are more fancy. We see them everywhere. But the industrial robots that perform heavier duty tasks, all of them are going to be using these heavy rare earths. The big question is, we know how many kilograms they are going to be using individually, and the big question is, what do we multiply that number with? Elon Musk is talking about billions of humanoids, although in one of his calls with the market, he recognized that he doesn't know where the rare earths are going to come for all that production. No? So I believe it's still, and clearly we are not in a position right now as a planet to make serious assumptions about how many robots are there going to exist in the next 5 to 6 years, no? But that they're coming, no? So that's why we're not including them in our estimations of demand. But if you do believe, Peter, that they are coming, the demand is going to be very, very high, no?
And along those lines, what's your pricing strategy in terms of content? How are you going to price the magnet offering?
That is also a great question. Look, the first thing that we're going to do is completely ignore the Chinese price. No, we believe that the Chinese published price does not reflect, the current market dynamics. We believe that it is highly manipulated in a way. No, with all the things that we're seeing, that the Chinese prices continue to go down. And we believe that they're not real because, look, if you see a price that is very low, the first thing that you say is, okay, I want to buy. No, but if you want to buy at those prices, you cannot. No, there are no observable transactions. You cannot buy. There are no observable transactions. There are no observable contracts, behind those prices. So we believe that they are just there first for China to purchase the mineral, and they purchase from Myanmar and a little bit from other countries in their southern border. Um, but the pricing for us is going to take, I believe, two stages. No, the first stage, I think we need to be relatively conservative, and we need to offer sort of a cost plus formula, in order to be able to build our facilities. I didn't give you the numbers in the presentation, but you can find them in the appendix of the presentation. And roughly, we need $600 million for Brazil, $150 million in Chile, $400 million for separation, and $150 million for metals and alloys. So the number is going to be probably somewhere between 1.2, 1.3, and $1.5 billion in the end. So we need to fund that, and for that we need to have offtake that allows us, to go to the capital markets and raise that money. But after we pay for that capex, Peter, of course, us as management, but also our board and our shareholders would like to be fully exposed, to earth prices. I think pricing will occur in the form of private auctions, probably, but given again how undersupplied this market is expected to be, there's a lot of room for the prices of rare earths to grow. No? And then there's another angle, no, that we need. I was just in a conference, and they had a beautiful electric vehicle. In this case, it was a Lucid. No, I don't know if you've seen the Lucid, but it's a high-end vehicle. And people were asking also about prices of rare earths, and I said, look, do you realize that this beautiful car will not be able to perform without rare earths, no, without the magnets, without permanent magnets, and the cost of the permanent magnets in that car is less than the cost of one of the tires of the car. No, so right now we're talking only about $200 and of magnets in an electric vehicle, in a high performance electric vehicle, and it's only around, between, I would say, $15 to $20 the cost of the dysprosium inside that magnet. No, so if I were to tell you, I am going to be charging double, triple, quadruple the amount of dysprosium, in order for you to have an independent supply chain, and you'll be completely able to overcome, a crisis like what we're seeing today, and experience an overcost of $60, in the vehicle, in a vehicle that on average costs $40,000 to produce. I think it's a no-brainer. No, we've done a study with MIT researchers. There's a slide also that you can see in the appendix with the results of that study. But essentially, the message here is the cost of rare earths is almost negligible compared to the industries, no, that they support.
We got a question from the field here. Can rare earths in different uses be recycled, and are there any substitutes?
I think recycling is going to be possible, but it's going to be highly uneconomic and difficult. No, these permanent magnets have been, the rares have been sintered. So just imagine recollecting used magnets from different sources. You're going to be transporting a lot of weight, in the form of iron. The contents of dysprosium and terbium is only between 1 and 3%. Then you're going to be needing a lot of energy, to separate. And finally, the quantities are going to be very, very small. At least they are. No? So for us to industrialize rapidly, we need credible mining sources to support the growth of these new industries.
Your shareholder partners are significant. How much of a factor are they in helping you drive the model forward? Are they collaborating with you or active, or are they fairly passive?
I would say they are very active. No, I think the way in which they mostly support us is first with a long-term view, no, and a long-term vision. When you want to sign contracts with OEMs, and you are, let's say, a junior mining company, you have much less credibility than if you go to those conversations saying, we are established mining and industrial groups. No, so that is already a great contribution. First, second, with talent. No, we have in our board the chairman of CAP, the chairman of Hochschild Mining and Cementos Pacasmayo. We have the CEO of Hochschild Mining, also part of our board, and they are, very helpful in terms of helping us form the right teams, attract the right talent, and the last capital raise that we did, we fully allocated, the money to them, no? So they continue to have an appetite, and when you are developing something as innovative as what we're doing, you really need to have, high quality patient capital, especially for these stages of early development, no? Then when we go to raise the, let's call it the $1.5 billion, we're going to be looking for additional shareholders. I'm sure that our existing ones will be supportive, but it probably will open the game much more to the capital markets by that time.
What would be the timeline for incremental capital raises? Is it going to be kind of one and done or on a project by project basis? What's your thought on raising the capital?
Look, right now I prefer to put ourselves, in the most demanding scenario, which is to develop everything at once. No, maybe there's a little bit of competition between the asset in Brazil and in Chile, but I like that. It puts pressure everywhere, not only on us but also our stakeholders. The speed at which we can obtain the permits, and I like to see those two projects competing. No, I think it's healthy. And I think also that is indispensable that we run in parallel the separation and the metals and alloys, because the real value in this industry is going to be able to be fully integrated rather than be just a junior mining player. No?
And you've got significant milestones that you're already checking the boxes on. The end of this year, you've got a significant number of them. If you could maybe give us a couple of insights on your milestones as we approach year end.
Yes, indeed. No, lots of things coming, Peter, in the coming 6 months. No, first of all, our expectation is to have both the EIA permits in Brazil and in Chile, and we're fighting really, really hard to achieve that. Second, in the case of Brazil, we are going to be publishing a PFS in the third quarter of this year, and then both Brazil and Chile to have a PFS ready at the beginning of next year. In terms of the separation plan, we are about to sign very shortly. We should announce this, but we've been very vocal about it. We've been working with Virginia Tech University, and our intention is to build a pilot plant for separation in the US in Virginia Tech's facilities. Also before, let's call it in the fourth quarter of this year. And we want to do something similar for metals and alloys. Is not just as advanced a separation at this point, but the idea is, if not at the end of this year, at the beginning of next, to have a pilot plant also demonstrating what we can do. And then in parallel, no, we need to move forward with offtake and financing. I think these two come together. I think offtake is going to be the absolute key, to obtain financing. So I don't worry about trying to secure funding before we have that. But I mentioned that we want to be in production by 2028. I think this is very important to OEMs. It's very important to governments. But if we want to maintain those dates, we need to be able, to secure offtakes and funding this year, no? And hence, our strong commercial efforts. Those are a little bit more private until we have something in concrete. But I can tell you, that we're going together with Vacuum Schmelze to have conversations and trying to secure an offtake that allows us, to build our projects.
So in talking to OEMs, do you have to have certain specs for the magnets? I mean, are you going to get design requirements from them, or how do you see going to market with the OEMs in terms of what they actually need in terms of specs?
Yes, there the magnet maker is key, no, because that's the interface really with the specs for the OEMs. We just need to make sure that we supply them with the right materials, no, and in all that process, you need to have efficient mining, efficient separation, and efficient alloy making. A completely doable if you have the right sources of heavy rare earths, no, in this case ionic clays. And having ionic clays, the proposal, I believe, is unbeatable, because that is the missing factor, in order to have a permanent magnet that you can guarantee that it is not vulnerable to these trade wars and trade negotiations and subject to potential, Chinese restrictions, no. So we believe that we have the key for the success for that strategy, and hence, the magnet makers are looking for us to partner with them, and the OEMs are also starting to react, no? And right now they're giving a lot more value, to that capacity to be geopolitically independent first, and second, to have traceable, sustainable material that is going to be, of course, heavily demanded by their customers, than, a cent here or a cent there in terms of cost, no? They have now, I think, fully realized that operating under high environmental sustainable standards, no, and sustainability encompasses environment and social, is absolutely worthwhile when you encounter situations like the one we're living on right now, no?
So when do you envision everything being live in terms of, the revenue model starting to kick in? Is this a 2030 type of timeline, or what's, just for guidance or thoughts on when the switch gets flipped?
Yes, I would like to have everything up and running by 2029. The bottleneck right now is the separation facility. No, the mines could be, and the concentrations could be in operation by 2028, but separation is on 2029. Last week we announced, I think this is fantastic news for Aclara, because we hired a new COO. It's a gentleman by the name of Hugh Broadhurst, and he was in charge of developing I don't know if you are familiar with the Tucker Pass project in Nevada, no, where they are extracting lithium from clays, no, with a loan of $2.2 billion from the Department of Energy and an offtake with General Motors, no. And Hugh has joined Aclara as a COO, and the objective of that is pushing the accelerator as much as we can, in order to make sure that we're doing everything possible to bring that project forward, no?
And is his joining Aclara, validation? I'm curious kind of how you found him, and, what kind of prompted him to join small company.
What prompted him to join?
Yeah.
Well, clearly with lithium, we've gone already through a cycle, no? But I think he has figured, sorry to be reiterative, but this market is going to be severely undersupplied. No, I cannot stress more that point. And the position that Aclara is in is one of privilege, no, because of the quality of our assets, the ionic clay deposits, and second, with our vertical strategy of integration, that is quite unique. He loves that part. No, he's going to play an enormous role in that. He's going to be responsible for the production of Chile and Brazil, but being able, to lead integration in the US. This is fully aligned, Peter, with the intent of the US administration. No? If you look at the executive orders that President Trump signed on January 20th, there's one called Unleashing American Energy. And the second paragraph of that policy, the second one already says we need to have processing of rare earths in the US. No, so look, to develop a project, that is sort of a boutique version of what China has. No, we're going to be able to produce around 16% of China's official production of dysprosium and terbium. No, so it's quite material. And doing that in the West and having, the biggest superpowers in the planet sort of cheerleading for your success. They love what we're doing. At the same time, we're going to be producing these elements to support electric vehicles, wind turbines, robotics, etc. Things that are going to bring, wealth to humanity. I mean, the purpose behind what we're doing is significant, no? And finally, important to all of us is the financial prospectivity, no? Clearly, we are right now trading at a very low value, but if we are able to pull this off, no, I think the value of this company for a country like the US who wants to lead in technology is going to be valued at a very high level, no? So there's also financial return also on this type of decisions, no, on joining Aclara.
So Ramon, we are done with the questions. That was a great summary right there at the end. And it's a really exciting story. Glad we were able to host you today and look forward to your plans to continue to grow the company.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Peter. It has been a pleasure, and I am here anytime you need me.
That sounds good. Thanks so much.
Cheers. Thank you.